The Vikings emerged from the mists of Scandinavia like a tempest, their longships slicing through the waves, their axes cleaving through the weak and the mighty alike. They were neither the noble warriors of myth nor the mindless savages of terrified monks, but something far more complex. Ruthless conquerors, brilliant navigators, masterful traders, and devout believers in gods as fierce as themselves. From the cold, wind-lashed fjords of Scandinavia arose a people whose name would be whispered in fear across Europe. The Vikings, seafarers, raiders, traders, and conquerors, were not bound by kingdoms or laws, but by a code of strength, loyalty, and honor. They did not see themselves as mere plunderers. They were warriors chosen by fate, carving their legacy into history with sword and fire. Yet, for all their might, the same forces that propelled them to glory would become their undoing. Their thirst for conquest would turn against them, their gods would be abandoned, and the world they once shaped with axe and sail would leave them behind. This is the saga of the Vikings. For nearly 3 centuries, from the late 8th to the 11th century, the Vikings carved a bloody swath across Europe and beyond. They plundered monasteries, toppled kings, and built settlements from the frozen reaches of Greenland to the sun-baked coasts of North Africa. Their gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, and Loki, demanded strength and sacrifice, and in return, the Vikings pursued glory with an insatiable hunger, believing that death in battle would lead them to Valhalla, where they would feast and fight. To the unsuspecting world, the Vikings were an unstoppable force. Their longships, marvels of engineering, allowed them to strike swiftly and vanish before retribution could be mustered. They did not simply raid, they conquered. The Norsemen stormed the British Isles, claiming lands that would later become the Danelaw. They breached the heart of Francia, extorting kings for vast sums of silver in exchange for peace, only to return the following season with greater numbers. They founded settlements in Ireland, Scotland, and Normandy, where their descendants would, in time, forge one of history's most powerful empires. But they were not merely warriors. The Vikings were shrewd traders who established far-reaching trade networks, stretching from the icy fjords of Norway to the bazaars of Baghdad. They carried furs, walrus ivory, and amber southward, and returned with silk, spices, and silver. Discovering Iceland, settling Greenland, and, centuries before Columbus, setting foot on the shores of Vinland, North America. Yet, for all their strengths, the Vikings carried within them the seeds of their own destruction. Their society was built upon war, and while war brought them wealth, it also bred conflict among themselves. Their chieftains and jarls vied for supremacy. Their kings rose and fell in endless cycles of betrayal and bloodshed. Unlike the great empires of Europe, they did not unite under a single banner until it was too late. The world around them evolved. The very lands they had once terrorized grew stronger, their kings forging armies capable of standing against the Norse. England, long a patchwork of rival kingdoms, became unified under Alfred the Great and his successors, who learned to resist the Viking onslaught. Francia gave birth to Normandy, ruled by Vikings who had embraced Christianity and the ways of their former enemies. Even in their own homelands, the rise of Christian king. Thank you for supporting the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And if you haven't done so, please do. Thank you, and please continue to enjoy. Even in their own homelands, the rise of Christian kings, such as Olaf Tryggvason and Harald Bluetooth, marked the beginning of the end for the old gods. Christianity was both a salvation and a doom for the Viking world. The cross brought unity and structure, but it also stripped the Vikings of the very identity that had made them feared. The gods of Asgard, once invoked before battle, were forsaken. The rituals of blood and iron gave way to the doctrines of mercy and penance. The berserkers, those wild warriors who fought with the fury of beasts, faded into legend. The final death knell came with the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. King Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking warrior, led an invasion of England, seeking to reclaim the glory of the past. Instead, he met his end at the hands of Harold Godwinson's army. The era of Viking supremacy was over. The battle was brutal. The Viking warriors fought as they always had, unyielding and fearless. But for the first time they faced an enemy who had learned to fight back. The English held the bridge, the Viking lines broke, and Harald Hardrada, struck by an arrow to the throat, fell. The dream of Viking conquest died with him.